our reporters for Fox 59 and CBS 4 at the campaigns, talking with supporters and the campaign about what's next.
Matt, it's interesting to note where some of these early returns are coming from and how these three candidates are doing in different parts of the state.
It is, Dan. You hear the word turnout, 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 but that's really going to be the key factor in what we see, especially when the polls close statewide. I mean, we're not talking more than 20% likely for statewide turnout, so we then really do have to look regionally to where these results are going to come. We saw the candidates strategically target a number of markets and a number of cities over the last 48 hours, knowing that those are some of the pockets they need to reach. And Dan, as we're looking at these early returns, we are seeing Mike Braun with that early lead you mentioned, very early, doing well in Hamilton County, along with Cass and Boone counties.
Where Matt Smith is standing by with our team there as we get more and more results coming in, Matt.
Yeah. Hi, Bob. They just asked me if I wanted to move my coffee cup, and I said no because it could be a long night. We're going to bring in Tim Swearens, Indy Star columnist. All right, Tim, when we look at this Senate race, let's see, we have about 16% of the vote in, Mike Braun 41%. Rokita and Messer tied at 29%. In terms of what we've seen of where these votes are placed so far, is this good news for Mike Braun, or is there still a long night ahead?
It's certainly good news at this point for Mike Braun.
All right, Trevor, at Mike Braun's campaign. Trevor, thanks so much as we see his supporters beginning to gather this evening, running as an outsider, they say, hoping it's paying off, optimistic at this point. Let's check in with Haley Bowles. She has been stationed this evening at Luke Messer's campaign. The conservative in this race in terms of who the establishment, some of them would like to see. Haley, what is the mood and atmosphere like at this hour? We are about 10 minutes into polls being closed. Mike Braun with a lead, a bit of a lead with 8% reporting. What is the Messer camp saying at this hour? And Haley, thank you. We appear to have a lot of optimism in terms of where we sit at 7:13 p.m. with the polls closed for 13 minutes across the state. We'll see how these moods change at each of these campaigns over the next couple of hours. Let's head on down to House District number 6. The Republican primary there, we're going to see a familiar name, at least in terms of last name. Greg Pence and Jonathan Lamb, really the top two names of this Republican ticket. Of course, Greg Pence, the brother of the vice president, Mike Pence, running in the vice president's former congressional district with 17% of those votes reported as we take a live look at this campaign this evening. Greg Pence with a very sizable lead. Let's bring in some of our Indy Star reporters who have been working their beats, who have been working these stories for several months now. Greg Weaver and Tony Cook. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Early thoughts as we take a look at these numbers coming in, not only in the House race, but of course the U.S. Senate race. Clearly, social media plays a big factor in terms of what we see in terms of the campaigns, their outreach, their ads, not just on TV. Mike talked about this major influx, especially when you look at the U.S. Senate primary. Not only that, of course, tonight we're seeing the reaction, right, on social media. 7:40, polls have been closed for about 45 minutes across the state of Indiana. Still the U.S. Senate Republican primary. Too close to call as these numbers come in. We have one confirmed race in the 6th congressional district where Greg Pence has won the Republican primary. Down in that portion of the state, we are joined with Indy Star columnist Tim Swearens. We are waiting for Greg Pence to speak. What do you think this message is going to ring of tonight?
Well, I think that obviously it's a night of celebration for Greg Pence and for his team. He was favored to win. It's not an upset by any means. But he's a newcomer to politics, and so this is his first time around, and it looks very good for him to join the U.S. House later this year.
Right. Let's broaden the picture out a little bit here. We are one of 4 primaries happening across the country tonight. Yes. West Virginia has received a lot of national attention and oxygen for their Republican primary race. Are we going to be able to take anything away from what we see in terms of these 4 states tonight and what this does going towards November, and whether this will be a referendum on the president, as Democrats really would like this to be?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in West Virginia. If there's one Senate race in the country that's even nastier than our own, it would be in West Virginia.
At this map for the U.S. Senate Republican primary between Mike Braun, Todd Rokita, and Luke Messer. Any surprises in terms of how Indiana voters, Republican voters, are voting? Luke Messer doing heavily well in his district. Mike Braun soaking up some of the oxygen in the other portions of the state.
Yeah, the only surprise to me at this point is the margin by which Braun Braun is leading. Now, still early, less than 20% of the votes counted.
Unfortunately, Dan, for you, it's just me out here. Tim is writing as we speak for the moment, so we'll keep you up so I can chat with you. You caught me in the middle of a little lunch, but hey, that's okay. So here's what we're understanding. Todd Rokita is about to come out, if he has not yet at the moment, along with Luke Messer, to talk. We can expect, I guess, at this point, those will be concession speeches as we look at the projections that have come in. But the numbers at this point are adding up for the number of national projections that we've seen for Mike Braun to win this. Dan, I'm curious from the panel, especially from Tony, what happens next? Do we see these Messer supporters, do we see these Rokita supporters immediately get behind Mike Braun in terms of what we saw in this primary? What happens come Thursday when the president and vice president are here? Do we immediately have unity, or does that take some time to heal, perhaps?
And I'm not sure